One of my biggest barriers to awakening, enlightenment, truth realization, whatever you want to call it, is comfort. Comfort has been one of the biggest attractors for me along this whole journey. And it still rears its head in various ways from time to time. It's not as bad as it used to be, and with the experiences that I've had, it's become a lot easier to be present with and deal with this overwhelming desire for comfort. But it's still an issue. Anything that involves a screen is inherently there to provide you some kind of comfort. Which is ironic because they say that actually the state that you're in when you're watching a TV show or consuming entertainment in general is actually mild depression. But then you take yourself away from that mild depression and the really strong felt sense of whatever it was you were suppressing by looking at that screen starts coming in full force. And that's not comfortable. And so you want to go back to the solace place of comfort, which is watching your show, scrolling through social media, whatever. I'm saying you, but I'm equally talking about myself and these impulses. So yeah, I mean, everybody knows. Everybody's been lectured to up the yin yang about how much the presence of entertainment everywhere is ruining our productivity and our emotions and all that stuff. I'm not here to give that lecture. The lecture I'm here to give is that it also blocks us from basic realization of truth. Because that is not information that can be sent through a screen. Truth isn't information, period. It's not words, it's not ideas, it's not something put into your brain. It's a felt sense. It's direct experience. That is the only way that truth is actually realized. A million times over, I'll say it, even if all the stuff that you're using to comfort you is a bunch of spiritual ideas. Well-written spiritual ideas, high-value spiritual ideas. The words themselves are only maps to the truth. And the truth only comes about in a relative state of quiet. When we're not using thoughts for any desired goal or purpose, and we're not drowning them out with constant stimulus. Yeah, truth is uncomfortable. Because it involves a bit of a withdrawal from a bunch of non-truths. And that's the other end of comfort also, is that we all have a lot of falsities that are comforting to us, that we just keep giving to ourselves because they're comforting. A lot of us live in kind of a fantasy world. And again, me included, so much of my life has been just jumping from one made-up story to another made-up story about myself and who I am and what the world is, what reality is, what anything that I look at is. I could come up with an untruthful story about. And I don't come down on myself for that. It's a survival tactic. It's literally the ego's survival tactic to come up with a new story for the present situation. And it will usually err on the side of choosing a story that is comforting. Partly comforting in the sense that, like, it says, yes, this is the final answer and I don't need to search anymore. a false sense of truth. And the only reason why we ever move past these falsities is because those falsities seek being comfortable ones. I've failed so much at applying myself strongly to areas of life that were just foundationally based on untruths. But I'm in a weird place right now because I'm not living comfortably. And I feel like I'm walking away from a different aspect of my life that I've held dear to me, like, all the time these days. But I'm living more truthfully these days. This is where the integrating comes in. This is where the integrating comes in. In a place beyond comfort. But again, I will say, the question that you just have to keep asking yourself is, what is wrong with this? What is wrong with this felt sense when I stop trying to comfort myself? Brain and emotions, thoughts and emotions, they'll fire off all these answers immediately. But is there anything actually wrong with this place outside of comfort? Yeah. I mean, it's disturbing sometimes to think about how long I could have gone living in non-truth, and then there are times when I think about, man, if you placed me in a room with a television, just like a smart TV that had access to all the streaming services throughout, also the entire internet, and it was just always readily available to me, right there. Would I have ever made any deep realizations about myself? Or would I have just lived in perpetual comfort? That's an extreme hypothetical, and the answer doesn't really matter, but I think that an excess of comfort ceases to be comforting for us. I think that within all of us there is a desire for truth. At least I hope so. One of my biggest fears has been that I'm going to just, now that I've reached some sort of spiritual goalpost, that I'm just going to go back to doing nothing but absorbing comfort content for the rest of my days. But I really don't think I'm in a place where I can ever return. I'm truth integrated, and not entirely by choice. A lot of it by, some level of personal will, but also just because truth has found me. And it's becoming more and more integrated in me and my life by the day. But the last note is that genuine self-care through some level of rest, through some level of what we could call comfort. That is still important. No matter how self-realized you are. But you also just might find that the truth itself goes through a phase of being extremely uncomfortable. But it might end up being just about the only comforting thing that you find after a certain point. Because it's the only thing that's real, it's the only thing that you can be sure of, it's the only thing that you can depend on until the end of time. Truth will persist, regardless of what else does.